Welcome to DCS Mig 21 BIS Startup Training. I'm Top Gun with the AKA War Dog Squadron. I'll be working today off of checklist version 1.5, and as with all my other checklists, if you see any instructions in red text, that means that those are items that are already in the correct position for a startup. So if you're getting into a fresh aircraft, you can kind of skip over those steps. But if you jump into, if you come back with an aircraft to rearm, refuel, repair, you have to shut down and restart again. Those will be items that you want to hit on when you go through the checklist again to restart. A side note for this aircraft is there is one or two lines in this checklist that have blue text on them. That is only if you are using the JTOW bottles. That's not what they're called for the Russian aircraft. I forget. I think it's SPRD or something like that. I forget what that stands for. But it's equivalent to the same thing as a NATO JTOW bottle. And if we get outside the aircraft here and zoom in, you have options on the aircraft here. You can see just above the drop tank on the left side there, you see something with a bunch of like red holes. You can choose to put a couple of different pieces of equipment there. You can either do countermeasures, which I highly recommend, or you can put the SPRDs, the JTOW bottles there. So there's going to be one on either side of the aircraft, and you can't have one of each. It's either all JTOW bottles or all countermeasures on either side. If you need to get up in a hurry and you don't want to burn a lot of fuel to do it, then JTOW bottles are probably the way to go, but I'd say 99% of the time you probably would rather have the countermeasures. So anyways, moving on. So let's go ahead and get started here. The cockpit itself, the canopy is not really clickable, at least not that I've found any hotspots for, so you'll need to do the key binding, which the default for is right control C as in Charlie. And let's get started. So we need power converter number 1 up to on, and same thing for power converter 2 and the battery heat. Now from here, let's go ahead and put power to the aircraft. So battery forward to on and DC generator forward to on. At this point, we can turn on the internal lights. So you got your instrumentation, and I wouldn't put it all the way to maximum because you may burn them out. So go up to max and then back them off a little bit. And same thing for the cockpit lights. Let's turn on the fire extinguisher up to on. And radio power up to on. And let's contact the ground crew to attach external ground power. So backslash to bring up your radio menu, F8 for ground crew, F2 for electrical power, and F1 to turn on.
Подключить питание. Прием. Командир, наземное электропитание подключено.
Alright, let's turn on the flight recorder up to on. And set your radio frequency, and just like a lot of other aircraft in DCS, this aircraft does not have the capability of dialing in a manual radio frequency, so you have to go into the mission editor and do it there. I've got mine set to channel 1 for this airfield, so this is just your preset knob right here, and there's your window indicator of what channel you're on. So let's contact ATC, so backslash menu again for the radio, F5 for ATC, F1 for your airfield, and F3 to start up.
Волокно. Сотый. Запуск.
100. Волокно. Запуск разрешаю.
Alright, let's go ahead and turn on the fuel pumps. So we've got fuel pump 1 and fuel pump 3 and the drain tank. Go ahead and start the APU up to on. And The throttle is locked, it won't move, so you've got a little catch lever back here. You have to unlock the throttle, and it'll jump forward a little bit when it unlocks. And then go ahead and advance the throttle until it's next to min. And a little side note, I have the English cockpit turned on. If you go into, before you start into a mission or get onto a server, go into the options menu page, which is a little gear icon at the top on the main menu for DCS splash screen, and go into the MiG-21 tab, and there's going to be a drop down there for cockpit mods. That's built in. You don't have to download anything. It's not a third-party thing. Just select English, and definitely would recommend doing that, because this is as you can see, this is a busy cockpit, and you don't want to have to be translating at the same time you're needing to hunt for a control. So let's turn on the formation lights, and this is a 3-position switch. You've got dim on the lower left, bright on the lower right, normal on the up. So we'll go ahead and put it into the up position. Engine start switch. This depends on your current weather conditions, so it's going to be set to normal by default. If it's ice cold out, you may want to set it to the down position for cold start, but for regular weather conditions, it's already in the correct position. And then let's go ahead and start the engine. You have to press and hold this probably good 3 seconds or so. Just hold it until you hear the engine react. And keep an eye on your engine instrumentation. And once the once the engine spools up and stabilizes, you'll want to immediately reduce the throttle back to idle. So just be ready for it. Alright, so at this point, SPRD jettison button cover. Sorry here. So if you're not carrying JTO bottles and you're carrying countermeasures instead, this is what you're pressing to launch your flares and whatnot. So this is just something I do. I pull that cover up so I can just keybind the button and I don't have to worry about the cover. Let's move on to gyro instruments. We've got 2 switches for that. Gyro for the gyro NPP SAU. The other one's for the DA200 and the other parts of that. So both of those forward on. If you are carrying a JTO bottle, you'll need to turn on power to the jettison circuitry and also the activation circuitry. So you've got the switch for powering on the system and switch for powering on the jettison controls. So both of those forward on. If you don't have JTO bottles, you don't need to worry about these. And next is AC generator, forward on. And now we move on to this bank of circuit breakers here. It's basically turning on everything. These ones right here are regarding the weapon systems. So we'll do this normally after we take off, but I'll do these at the end here. So we've got arc up, and these are all going to be up to on. And you will notice if you have your volume cranked up at a decent level, you'll notice that a couple of these switches in the cockpit, like the AC generator, DC generator, the ARK switch, it will result in, you'll start hearing a little bit of background noise. That's nothing unusual, that's normal, and unfortunately you can't get rid of it. You just have to deal with it. Radio altimeter, RSBN system, KPP, NPP, SAU, and SAU pitch. And we'll go over other systems, what all these systems are in a future video. Trimmer system, forward on. emergency hydraulic pumps, and the nose cone. Alright, so let's go ahead and put the flaps into takeoff position, which is this middle button here. And this one's a little difficult. It's NPP adjust push button. It's kind of tucked away here. It's this right here, this little, this button encased in this black circle. But you have to press and hold this until the HSI instrument down here stops moving. So let's go ahead and lock the canopy. This handle right here, forward. And that will pressurize, which is the littler one right next to it, forward to on. And let's go ahead and turn on our radar warning system up to the on position. And SOD IFF. Wave selector you can just leave alone, and IFS system up to on. And while we're over in this area, you may want to, especially if you're doing a scramble takeoff or you're going to be getting engaged pretty quickly once you get up, you want to left click once on this switch right here to get your radar into standby mode to get it started to warm up, because it takes a good several minutes for that thing to be ready to activate. At this point, let's contact the ground crew and disconnect ground power. So backslash to bring up the radio menu, F11 if you need to get back to the main menu, F8 for ground crew, F2 for ground electric power, F2 for off.
Отключить питание. Прием. Командир, наземное электропитание отключено.
And while we're at it, let's contact ATC to get clearance to taxi. So backslash again, F5 for ATC, F1 for your airfield, and F1 again to request taxi.
Волокно. Сотый. Руление.
Один, ноль, ноль. Волокно. Разрешаю руление на полосу 2-7.
Let's go ahead and turn on our taxi lights. 2 clicks on this to the up position, and you'll see the taxi lights under the wings here. I'll show you. And as you can see, those were lights that kind of pop down from the wing, so those are in the airstream, so you don't want to forget those. You don't want to be going too fast with those still down, because they may jam. So let's move on. Nose brake, that is already in the correct position. So how I look at it is, when you're on the ground, it's pointed. When you're on the ground, it's down. When you want to go up into the air, it's pointed off to the left. So just remember, when you're down on the ground, it's pointed down. And basically all this does is it massively reduces the effectiveness of the nose wheel. It basically kind of pseudo locks it into place. So if you've got this into the wrong position and you try and taxi and turn the aircraft, it's going to be extremely sluggish. You'll still be able to turn, but it'll be real slow. So you want to make sure this stays in the down position while you're running around on the ground. Just go ahead and turn on the pitot heat up into the on position. Kind of have to look around your stick to get to it. And if necessary, go ahead and adjust the barometric pressure for your altitude. It's kind of hidden by the landing gear handle here, but just mouse wheel over it to zero it out. And I typically do this in the Russian aircraft, is most of them have a landing gear lock, so you can't accidentally raise the landing gear on the ground. I turn this, I basically click on it to turn that off, so I don't forget about it and then try and raise the gear once I'm up in the air, and then have to fiddle with going back into the cockpit to turn this off. So I just turn it off ahead of time. So at this point, you're pretty much ready to go. Contact ATC. Once you've already contacted ATC for clearance, you can go to the assigned runway. Just remember that once you get to the assigned runway and you get lined up, turn the nose wheel brake on, and I'll go ahead with the next couple of steps. These are steps that you would normally do once you have taken off. So go ahead and turn the taxi lights off, full down position, and you'll be doing flaps back to 0. Retract the gear, and in several other Russian aircraft, once the landing gear is raised, you want to put this landing gear handle back into the center position, because if it's in the up position, it will slowly bleed away your compressed air, which is what gives you your brake power. So if you forget this and leave it up, by the time you get back down on the ground and land, you may not have any brakes left. So definitely something to remember. The other steps for once you're up in the air, you've got missile heat switch, and all of these are going to be up to on. You got missile controller power, power for the pylons 1 and 2, power for pylons 3 and 4, power for the gun, your optical sight, your gun camera. And when you do that, this will suddenly appear. So if you're coming into land and you don't want this thing in the way, this is the switch you'll want to hit into the down position to get rid of it. And last but not least, your IFF decoder. But that's pretty much it. Obviously, if you're going into combat, you probably want to turn off your navigation lights as well. But that's pretty much it at this point. You're good to go. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Hope this has been helpful. Thank you.